This is Megan Gotro,
McKenna Gobbler,
Alex Frills,
Kennedy Exley,
and Brooke Glenn. Thank you for joining us today on this sunny Sunday morning of November the 12th in Huntsville, Texas. We sure do hope you join along with us with a big cup of iced coffee as we discuss the different NTAC standards in place in our educational system today.
NTAC standards outline what teachers should know and be able to do to ensure that each of their K-12 students reaches the goal of being ready to enter the next grade. The purpose of these standards is to ensure that each student has the same understanding and knowledge and is prepared for the education that awaits them in the future.
So the first one we're going to talk about is Standard 6, which is all about assessments, which I found in STEMteachingtools.org that assessment is not only a way we can measure students' performance, but it's also a way for teachers to plan instruction and reflect on their own methods of teaching. When one assessment is planned and the other is not, this allows teachers to track the progress of the student throughout the year. They are also important because it allows the student and the teacher to see if they understand the classwork. It also helps motivate the student to set a goal for next year. Informal is not data-driven like formal assessment, and some examples of informal, which tracks how a child is doing on a specific book, while formal can determine statistically if the child is reading below average.
Yes, I think that a formal assessment doesn't always have to be data driven. Honestly, I think it's not realistic to try and base every assessment on data. I think a good informal assessment idea for teachers to implement is just asking the students how their day is going and preparing from there. McKenna, what do you think about that?
Well, me personally, I like formal because it will help teachers know when a student is performing below average or above average, and then they can address the problem if it needs to be noticed.
I agree. So for the seventh standard of NTASC teaching methods is also pertaining to assessment data, but how this will help the teachers plan lessons. So the question is, how can teachers use assessment data to help plan lessons? So teachers use assessment data to help plan lessons because assessments help the teachers focus on what the students need. Basically, assessment data helps teachers cater to the needs of the students. Assessment data can help the teacher place the students in a level of challenging and growing areas. This data can help the teacher place the layout of the classroom from seating charts to section groups. Knowing the data can go a long way. However, I think it is imperative for teachers to use a wide range of different assessments before they make decisions. One grade does not define a student.
Yes, Megan, I do think it's important for teachers to use informal and formal assessments, which can benefit the teacher and the student.
Exactly. So an example of using this in the classroom is asking the students a series of questions individually and seeing where the data places them and having an engaging and fun lesson meant to catch up those students slacking in that area, but keep the students who already know the material engaged and promptly reviewed.
By using assessment data to help plan lessons, I feel it's a great idea because all students need to be accounted for and it gives them all an equal opportunity.
Also, I think this also brings about the question of how broad our vision is as teachers. This idea was discussed in the book, What Great Teachers Do Differently. The author assesses how teachers in their classroom should consider decisions and view potential changes and what the outcomes would do to their students' learning.
For Standard 8, it's talking about why is it important for teachers to adapt instructions based on students' needs. Well, teachers need to focus on highs and lows of all the students. However, different students learn on all different levels, so it makes it important to adapt so each student gets a fair opportunity to learn. Being able to focus on all the students in the classroom is a main important role for teachers because they need to meet students' needs. Because meeting students' needs is tough, and you really have to focus on each individual and see the strengths and weaknesses they each have. Like I said before, it's important for the teachers to break down the instructions in ways all students will understand and learn. Making students do physical activities so they'll learn is a great way to get kids involved. And also breaking up into groups with these physical activities or even just having group discussions to where they can all put their opinions in is another great example on how to adapt to students' needs because it is important for the students to have a chance in life and not feel left out or behind.
Yes, McKenna, I feel that. I think the importance of adapting instructions based on the needs of students is directly related to focus. Our focus as teachers determines how the students in our classes will be affected by the assessments we give them and how we relate those to instructional materials.
So when I was in school, my teacher had to adapt her lesson plan due to the fact that I'm dyslexic. Like, for example, she gave me more time on my schoolwork.
Yes, it's so important for the teacher to realize where their students are and then take steps in a direction to where they want their students to be. It is the teacher's responsibility to assess their students and then adapt their classroom and teaching styles.
I also believe it is important for teachers to realize that students learn in different ways. I always had an easier time working in groups. Sometimes I'd have trouble understanding the teacher's instruction, so I felt better knowing I could ask my peers in my group.
The next standard we're going to talk about is why it's important for teachers to regularly assess individuals and group performances in order to meet students' needs. I think a significant characteristic of a teacher is their ability and willingness to see where their students are in comparison to where they need them to be. It's important for teachers to regularly and systematically assess individuals as well as group performances in order to meet their students' cognitive, linguistic, social, emotional, and physical needs. As the teacher analyzes the outcomes of student performance, he or she has the ability to change and conform his or her lesson plans, activities, and classroom instruction.
Yes, Kennedy, I see what you're saying. Regular assessments over how a student is doing in every level of learning is necessary to the student's success.
You're so right. By truly assessing whether or not the children's needs are being met, the teacher has the ability to teach the whole person. By providing lesson-specific instruction and lectures, the teacher can teach to the cognitive area of a child. In order for the student to learn linguistically, socially, and emotionally, the teacher must incorporate group activities, discussions, and corporate lessons in their classrooms.
So in my experience, group activities are a great way for students to learn and build on their social skills.
Exactly. We witnessed this through some of the videos we watched. The teachers were no longer just talking at their students from the front of the class, but instead the students were up and walking around, rotating to different centers and discussing what they were learning with each other, as the teacher was also rotating and talking to them. This kind of atmosphere in the classroom meets the linguistic, social, and emotional needs of every student.
When I was in grade school, one example of a cognitive way of learning was that my teacher would have stations set up around the classroom and we would get to move and complete the various activities based on the learning points for that lesson.
In the next InTech standard, we talk about how teachers can design instruction to address each student's diverse learning strengths and needs. A couple of examples I came up with are to collaborate with other teachers, show students you care by getting to know their individual needs and strengths and sharing their concerns, hopes, and dreams. Also by maintaining high standards and demonstrating high expectations for all ethnically, culturally, and linguistically diverse students. Choose culturally relevant curriculum and instructional materials that recognize, incorporate, and reflect students' heritage and contributions of various ethnic groups. Also incorporating multiple forms of assessment.
You see, I feel it's nice to have a relationship with all students because then they feel comfortable with their teachers and know that they can always go to them for their needs.
Yes, with that being said, McKenna, support from other teachers is important when trying to become an effective teacher.
I completely agree with everything said. I think it is so important for teachers to be adjustable and have many different ways of assessing the students. The purpose of assessment is to understand. That is the ultimate goal. And yes, there are many ways we can separate our students every day. We can assess our students every day. A great everyday assessment that the teachers can use is one question or open hand exit ticket. This will get the students reflecting on what they learned and the teacher gets a good assessment.
With all that being said, we have run out of time for today's show. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Bye!
Bye.